The Council betrayed Earth. Then humanity returned with an armada. The forward display did not show an explosion. It showed a mathematical extraction. 3 heavy Zephyrus cruisers tore apart under their own momentum as high-velocity kinetic slugs pierced their core matrices from 10 light-seconds out. Overlord Zalvorn stood paralyzed before his 12-meter holodable, watching the red indicators disappear in clusters of 3 every 90 seconds. The sensors on his command deck did not register weapon fire. They registered structural failure. The air inside the flagship bridge grew hot, smelling of scorched copper and ionized fuel. Would you have signed the decree, or would you have checked the foundry lines? Because the line is live and the count has begun. Stay close. 40 winters before the Vanguard burned, the ledger room in the Alabaster High Court smelled of fresh silver ink and wet slate. High Judge Vexarin adjusted his bronze shoulder plates and pressed his signet ring into a block of hot blue wax. He did not look up at the minor human delegation standing in the lowest tier of the chamber. The administrative order was brief. Sector 4 was officially removed from the security perimeter, its trade routes deleted from the central star maps, and its population reclassified as non-resident labor. The High Court operated on numbers, and humanity's registered fleet was too small to balance the ledger. The Zephyrus Dominion fleet dropped out of warp space directly into the Cimmerian meridian. 3,000 dark, ribbed assault ships formed 3 rigid columns, their obsidian prows slicing through the pale green gas clouds of the border zone. Overlord Zalvorn watched the tactical display update. The official council files on his console showed exactly 14 human corvettes patrolling the primary colony world. He settled his weight onto his rear limbs, his thick carapace clicking against the metal floor plates. The conquest was supposed to be a standard cleanup routine. "Broadcast the terms," Zalvorn commanded, his lower mandibles twitching as he opened the subspace channel. "Give them 5 minutes to park their hulls and open their hatches." 40 light-years away, inside the steel command bridge of the battleship Goliath, Fleet Commander Silas Mercer sat in a bolted iron chair. He wore a faded wool service jacket that smelled of old chicory coffee and cold oil. His right thumb methodically turned the manual winding pin of a small brass stopwatch, listening to the dry, rhythmic click of the spring inside the casing. Behind him, 3 data slates hummed with zero-latency telemetry feeds. "The invaders are sending the standard surrender file, sir," Adjutant Rostova said, her fingers remaining still on the glass display. "They are using the old colonial format." Mercer did not look up from the watch. He clicked the winding pin 3 times. "Let them finish their protocol. We have calculated exactly how much time their ignorance requires." What the Zephyrus Dominion did not know was that Earth had stopped updating its public registries the day the High Court signed the reallocation order. For 40 cycles, every mass driver produced, every capital hull laid down, and every automated ordnance platform deployed had been kept entirely off the central grid. They had built their navy behind the heavy radiation shields of the gas giants, working inside the blind spots of the Council's ancient census sweeps. They did not build to defend a border, they built to execute a penalty clause. "The timer has reached 0, Adjutant Rostova reported, her voice flat. "The lead column is shifting into an orbital approach vector." "Initialize Operation Pale Horizon," Mercer ordered quietly. He pressed the stopwatch pin down. Across 3 hidden sectors, the black hulls that had been waiting in the shadow of the frozen moons began to draw power. The green gas clouds of the meridian did not part. They glowed from within as 380 advanced kinetic battleships came online simultaneously. Behind them, 2,400 autonomous ordnance platforms unlocked their firing pins and synchronized their tracking grids with the Goliath's primary tactical array. On the bridge of the enemy flagship Iron Crown, the confident hum of the main drive was drowned out by a low, frantic chime. Zalvorn leaned over the holodable as the 14 red icons suddenly fractured, multiplying into thousands of high-mass signatures that covered the screen. The software struggled to categorize the alloy profiles. They were dense, heavy, and engineered with a modern material logic that did not exist in the Council's historical archives. "The registry is incorrect," Analyst Chenkor shouted, his upper lenses flashing as he checked the incoming data streams. "These aren't local security corvettes. These are high-tier kinetic platforms." "Turn the columns," Zalvorn commanded, his carapace tightening as his optics locked onto the grid formation. "Form a defensive block now." The human line did not wait for the columns to rotate. The zero-latency network distributed target slots across the entire Armada in less than 2 seconds. The forward kinetic lances on the Goliath charged with a high-frequency thrum that vibrated through the floorboards. No warning, no parley, no escape. The void fragmented. The 3 heavy cruisers at the front of the Zephyrus line simply ceased to exist as 2-ton tungsten blocks cored through their shields, their hulls buckling outward under their own internal pressure. The automated ordnance platforms fired in synchronized salvos, creating a solid wall of accelerating mass that stripped the obsidian armor from the enemy ships like dry scale. Zalvorn watched his left flank disappear from the display board. The human ships moved with a terrifying, silent discipline, executing precise crossfire angles that left no vector open for a warp jump. There was no communication on the open channels, no demands for surrender, and no emotional declarations. There was only the steady, rhythmic calculation of mass moving against metal. "The vanguard is completely gone," Chenkor said, his hand dropping from the dead console. "The secondary columns are crossing into our own debris field." Silas Mercer checked the face of his brass stopwatch on the bridge of the Goliath. The second hand had moved through exactly 11 marks since the first mass driver had cleared its tube. The tactical grid showed the final 3 enemy cruisers drifting without power, their engines dark and their primary weapons cored out. "Secure the line," Mercer said, sliding the watch into his wool pocket. "Route the primary recording feed directly into the central court log." Back in the Alabaster High Court, the silver archive terminal suddenly flickered, its ancient bureaucratic ledger freezing mid-entry. The high projection screens above the tiers turned white, then filled with the raw telemetry data of the 11-minute engagement. High Judge Vexarin stood up from his bronze seat, his large optics widening as he watched the total liquidation of the Dominion's primary strike force broadcast directly into the official legal record. The room fell completely silent. The delegates from the founding species stared at the screen as a single line of text printed across the bottom of the display, overriding the silver ink signatures of the old treaty. Silas Mercer appeared on the transmission feed, his scarred fingers resting on the edge of the screen. He did not yell, and he did not claim victory. He simply looked at the assembly tiers through the lens of a live foundry monitor. "We kept the old receipts," Mercer said. "The watch had stopped ticking, which means your transition window has officially closed." The silver terminal screens locked into a permanent data loop, repeating the image of the shattered obsidian fleet drifting through the green gas. High Judge Vexarin remained motionless at the center podium, his hands resting on the stamped wax seal of the decree that had untethered the Armada. The word printed across the High Court screen did not clear. It faced up, cold and permanent. "Counted."